Hi, folks. So today's guest is Darren Cawley, a motivational speaker for the healthcare industry. So, Darren, if you can give us a bit of your background and tell us how you ended up as a motivational speaker.
Yeah, a motivational speaker. It's not something you see on the Leaving Cert, to be honest. Very, very much by accident. I was diagnosed with kidney disease at the age of 20 while studying for a degree in sports and fitness studies. Total life-changing, total disaster for my life. And, I got over the initial diagnosis. I got a transplant, which subsequently I lost. And then I spent about 9 years on dialysis. And dialysis every 2 days in hospital, getting treatment to keep myself alive. So it was pretty topsy-turvy life there in my early 20s. But as I grew up, matured and accepted my reality, I suppose my attitude changed in a lot of ways. And I joined what's called Westport Lions Club. And the Lions Club is a charity organisation, and we came up with the idea of me going into schools talking about donor awareness. And, at the time my confidence was low. I felt pretty useless member of society because I was on dialysis. I was working part-time. I wasn't getting on with life like I expected I should be. But through standing up and speaking to young people, it kind of went, wow, they really took from that. They really enjoyed it. The teachers gave a big round of applause. They started to learn about resilience and overcoming adversity through my story. And suddenly I felt useful. I felt, well, here's something I can do to help other people. And it's bettering me too as a person. And so that's how I started really as a motivational speaker.
Wow. And I nearly find it ironic. I think have you switched your mind so much there that you didn't even say useless first? Like useful came out straight away so you really had to sharpen your mind. So you've been a speaker, and now, if you don't mind me, so your current job is in sales, and then you've been a patient. So how has those kind of roles shaped your sort of perception on communication and communication in medicine, in healthcare?
Yeah, I guess I'm 25 years now living with kidney disease. I've been there a long time, and obviously I changed my mindset. I became a very positive person, outgoing, proactive, because that's what I needed to be, someone with a health issue, And I spent a lot of time in hospitals. I spent a lot of time talking to healthcare teams, doctors, nurses, clinicians, and with varying results. Very interesting conversations. Some healthcare professionals they are professionals in every way, and they're a joy to be with, and I learn from them, and I really want to improve my health with their help. And then other people, you nearly want to go the opposite direction because they're not nice, they have very bad bedside manner, and so you don't feel like living up to their expectations. You don't want to do what they tell you to do nearly. You kind of rebel against it because of the way they say things. Only over lockdown, all my speaking engagements, everything stopped. And I took a role in a local business here called Westport House. It was like a tour guide, and it was history, and I'm into that. I loved it. And suddenly I was asked to take on a sales role, which is something I'd never done before. And because I'm an avid reader, I started getting the best books on sales and psychology, and I absolutely was drawn in by them. I was so regretful I didn't do this kind of job sooner. And so it was a revelation in every way, the sales role. And then I got used to the job, I've settled into it now, and I'm reflecting on the stuff I've learned. How come we're not using that in the healthcare industry, in hospitals, in healthcare facilities? Why aren't we using the science of persuasion and influence to inspire patients to take greater control over their own health? So that's kind of been my revelation really over the last few months, and I'm kind of playing with that in my mind now. I'm putting some stuff to paper, so it's an exciting journey.
Fantastic, which neatly brings me into a nice segue there. So you've basically been inspired to write a book called The Influence Effect, and what is this core message that you're trying to create for healthcare professionals?
Well, I suppose at an overarching, an objective kind of level, it very much is for generations nearly now, right? Especially in the Western world, we have been strongly influenced by salespeople, by big brands, by media, to direct our attention in a certain way, lead us to carry out things to buy something, to take on a certain activity. We've been persuaded, influenced, and sales has a positive and negative connotations, the same as influence and persuasion. They can be, we've been persuaded over the years to smoke, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can persuade someone to smoke, stuff that's full of tar into their lungs and potentially make them very, very sick. Why can't we do the reverse of that and use these exact same tactics and tips to reverse people's illogical and negative health aspects into a more positive, leaning, health promotion kind of direction? I think, like, why not? Why can't we do this? And some people might say, oh, that's unethical. You're persuading people in a negative way. No, we're using negative effects, maybe, negative tactics at some stage, but the positive end result is greater community health, greater personal health for people. So that's kind of objective strategy side of things, but like down at the tactical levels, the simple thing we can do is our words. The words we use have huge influence over the people we deal with. So if we can change the words slightly, maybe we can change people's reactions and people's attitudes and create a positive message to enhance their health.
I mean, it is a powerful message because, of course, no one can really argue the influence of sales and media on a global level. Like, I mean, yes, we can bring it up to the large brands, but I mean, of course, I mean, we're drowned in algorithmic stories that try and, you know, pluck at every vice we have. And of course, to take, you know, I'm assuming the large brands and companies, they must spend millions to try and figure out what words and phrases and how to get in our heads. And why wouldn't we use it for the healthcare industry? So would you be able to give viewers almost like, if words can heal or words can harm, would you have an example when you look back over 9 years in hospital of a time where the words could have been used a little bit better? Do you have an example?
Okay, I probably have a whole list of them, really. But like you said there, millions of euros have been spent to persuade people, you know, using for commercial reasons. And also, millions and billions have been used to heal people. Medical technology, drugs, doctors, consultants, millions. But if the bedside manner, if the way I interact with a doctor, or more importantly, a doctor interacts with me, is negative, well, there's less of a chance of me adhering to the treatment protocols that he gives me. And I think that's the challenge. Now, one of my early memories is sitting in a hospital bed as a young person, and a team of doctors, because they often come in packs, kind of doctors and sub-doctors and dietitians, and they'll come into the room and the doctor will glance at me and say, hello, Mr. Cawley, and then turn to the nurse and say, well, how is Mr. Cawley doing today? And how many times did he go to the bathroom? And has he taken his medicine? And they're talking about me, and I'm lying there right in front of them, being ignored. And then at the end, oh, thank you very much, and they walk off. Like, so how can I respect him or talk about him in a positive way when he didn't even look at me? He didn't ask me the questions. I was something to be acted upon. I had no kind of opportunity to be a proactive person in my own health care. So that was very disheartening to see that this guy who's treating me, who's keeping me alive, because I have kidney failure, yet have no conversation direct with me, ignore me. And that was mentally nearly disastrous, I think. That's one small example, like, you know.
Indeed, but it's very powerful. And to play devil's advocate, if you don't mind, so I'm assuming that they obviously do that on purpose, because if they start talking to patients and maybe then, you know, you get a talkative patient and the doctor finds it hard to do their rounds as fast as we can. So I guess we're looking at almost, I don't know how you could change the entire structure of how hospitals or doctors would work. Do you feel like that's maybe what is needed? Like, I guess you've a good as opinion as anyone in being 9 years in hospital, that did you feel the entire way that you were treated as a patient was kind of poor when it came to the communication?
No, not always. It was very much courses for horses. Different doctors have different attitudes, different opinions. A doctor who walks in with empathy, with understanding, and how are you doing, and looks you in the eye, and you feel that he cares about you, well, then you live up to that expectation. You know, if he's saying, doctors are often telling me to take 6, 7 different medications, right, at different times of the day, some with food, some without food. So there's a lot of stuff to take in. And if I don't feel like they care, I don't care, which means my adherence to taking the tablets perfectly, I probably won't do it. I'll show that doctor. You know, I was a young person, so I had a chip on my shoulder, obviously, because I shouldn't be sick, and why am I sick? And I'm being treated like crap by certain people. And the other doctors come in and you kind of warm to them and you feel like they're listening to me, they're engaging with me, they want to hear what's wrong. And I know that's hard from a doctor. You walk in and say, you know, my legs are a bit swelled, I'm getting headaches. They've heard that from the previous 25 people they've talked to. But you have to allow that minute or two for the patient to open up, to express, to feel heard. And then in return, they're ready to feel heard and to take the advice that was given. So it has to be a kind of win-win. And I don't believe that doctors can spend inordinate amount of time listening to every patient tell their whole story. But if you can start the conversation with specific questions like, how is this specific issue? And you'll get a specific answer back rather than bland, oh, how are you doing today? Well, then you'll go into a whole long list. So if doctors can focus questions which have an open and closed answer, well, that's certainly a way to start a conversation.
Ah, okay. So like you are getting into specifics where, yes, we understand that they're time limited. So if anything, they need to use that time even more wisely, that every word they use should almost be, trained in the sense that they need to create these few minutes with the customer and connect, create rapport and trust faster than it would take normally. And this is where I guess the communication should be as much part of the training as anything, that they should really be trained in how do we communicate to our patients. Are doctors trained in this? Do you know if this is part of when you're training to be a doctor, or?
I don't know exactly. I know certain aspects. They might have a 1 hour lecture on this maybe in their second year. Okay. Of a 7-year degree. They might have 2 hours over the course of 7 years. So it's kind of just taken as, well, obviously it's just taken as given that. Yeah. But the primary focus for doctors is on the medicine and on the treatment and it's very mechanical.
Yes.
And again, you reminded me of something there. I spoke with a friend last night, and we were saying the similarities again between healthcare and the salesperson. If a salesperson has 2 minutes to talk to a potential client, they have to be succinct, they have to be clear, they have to be concise, they have to be engaging if they want to get the response they want. And it's the same with doctors. If they can be clear, concise, engaging, they will get the response from the person they're dealing with. And they're like, our health is their win, is their sale. If they see a healthy patient walk out the door, well, that's great. I've done my job. I've made a good sale there. I've succeeded. Wow. So if you look at the outcome, it's not an exact consideration, a salesman and a doctor, but the time at the door where you're talking from a salesperson to a potential customer, you have to tick a lot of boxes in a very short period of time. You have to be warm, engaging. You have to get people to like you and then maybe take your recommendation. Because that's what a salesperson is. It's someone who has won the respect of the person enough so that when they make a recommendation, they might take it. And that's what the healthcare team are doing. They're making a recommendation. You need to do this, this, and this. This will improve your health. And but if you do it in a mechanical, cold way, why would I bother? Even though it's for my own interest, but I don't like you, I don't trust you. Why should I do what you're telling me to do? No sale.
And we all have those examples. I mean, we are in a great country here in Ireland, and I suppose we probably have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. And yet, you go into an average Irish pub and ask a few people their experience with hospitals or doctors, we all have our negative stories. What would be something that a clinician could say tomorrow, or something small that you think would help them change a patient's perspective or get the ball rolling? And is there something small that a doctor could say?
Well, I think there's a few little phrases I'm working on at the moment, and like one of them is when working in sales, we often use the phrase most people. So most people go with this product. Most teachers buy this package. Most people. So everyone wants to be like, I'm most people. So whatever you're going to say, I'm most people, so I should go along with it. So if a doctor said to me, most patients on kidney disease go with this drug and this drug because it helps for this reason and this reason. That's rational, relevant, and it's helpful. And so I'm most people. I agree with you. I think another one was, which I'm trying to flesh out, is like you have 3 choices. And in sales, we always come across, you have 3 choices. You have the kind of cheap one that's kind of crappy. You've got the middle one, which probably what you really want. Then you have the more expensive one, which not everyone can go for. So you're pushing people into the middle one. And it could be the same with healthcare. So if someone comes in with pre-diabetes, we say, as an example, and the first choice, you have 3 choices, Mr. Cawley. It could be your first choice is to do nothing, to continue the lifestyle you have, but in the long term you're going to get very ill. Okay? The second choice is to adapt your lifestyle slightly and start taking this medicine, and that should help bring down the diabetic signals, and kind of lessen it. And the third choice is give up all sweets and chocolate, give up going out for dinner, give up wine, give up alcohol, give up everything and just eat salad, and you'll kind of cure yourself. So the patient will disregard the first one because it means he's going to get sick quicker. The last one is just too much of a sacrifice for anyone. Very few people can lead that sort of sacrifice. So you want him to start a treatment protocol, adapt his diet slightly, hopefully see the improvements, and the end result is he's going on the direction of becoming a more healthy person and staying pre-diabetic. So you have three choices, and it's not the doctor picking the decision. Kind of paradox of choice there.
That's
He's persuading you, but yes,
yeah.
I'm involved. I'm a proactive member in my own treatment, and I think I'll go with number 2, doctor. Certainly, if you think so, that's a great idea. Here's the medication, here's the lifestyle changes, and it's a win-win.
It is. That's very powerful, because of course these sale tactics do work, and you know the small, middle, and large pricing options that we see everywhere, and maybe people, I'm sure everyone knows they're there, but sometimes they are done so succinctly you don't notice them. But as you said, it's not even about that. It's about the person feeling that they're deciding, as opposed to just a doctor coming in and going, this is what you need to do, you can listen to me or you don't, I'm the doctor, I don't really care, this is what you need to do, and that's it. And yeah, you don't feel like you had any ownership over your own kind of healthcare decision. So to give someone, you know, that feeling that they're a part of the solution, yes, that's very, very powerful.
The two things I mentioned there, right? It's not taking the doctor any longer. If he only has 8 minutes per patient, it's not taking longer. It's just changing your words, changing how you kind of present things to the patient, and then giving him the examples, and then he will hopefully go with the positive one.
So is this what you're saying? I read through your ebook, and you mentioned something kind of communication design, like designing conversations like experiences. So in a medical context, is this what you mean, that you're trying to just help doctors with certain phrases or certain positionings that will help them convince their patients? Is that what you're trying to get at?
Absolutely. In the patient-doctor kind of conversation, and being more specific and focused about the questions you're asking, and you will get the results you want back from the patient. So another choice there that doctors could use, which I find very powerful, is to use the phrase kind of, if you can just imagine, or just imagine. And what that does is you're putting the patient into the future. So just imagine after you take this medication, after you have this operation, after you change your lifestyle, just imagine 6 months' time when you're out running with your little girl and your kids and you're having a great time. At the time, you're in hospital or you're in a doctor's surgery, you feel terrible, you can hardly breathe at night, depending on what the illness, you might have a broken leg, and they're asking you to do A, B, C, and D. And you'll find that so mentally hard to do. But when the doctor says, just imagine, he's projecting you into the future of when you're cured, of when everything he says come true. So you're kind of moving to a place where you can see how your issues are resolved, you're out in nature, you're having fun, you're playing with your family, you're on holidays, and the pain you're suffering now won't exist in that time. So by moving the patient's mindset away from the pain and the struggle of the moment into the future, you're using their imagination. And like we say, the subconscious can't tell the difference between real and imagined input. So by bringing imagination into it, you're bringing a new reality to that person, which is helping their healthcare. Because if their mind is positive and proactive and they're thinking about solutions and becoming healthier, they're more engaged, which means they will take the treatment that you're offering. They will make the lifestyle changes you want them to make, because they know long term they're going to be in a better, happier place.
That's fantastic, Darren. Yes, it's very powerful stuff. So my last question, if you could speak to every medical student or clinician for 30 seconds, what would you tell them? What would you tell them about their words and how they use them?
Yeah, a lot of time after 7 or 8 years as training to be a doctor, it's about the medicine, it's about the treatment, it's about the machinery, it's about the drugs, you know, it's about the human being, right? You have to humanize everything you do as much as possible. And humans are not physical beings entirely. They're mental, they're emotional. So by treating the physical, you have to treat the mental and emotional also. And that's like the day I left the hospital after being diagnosed with kidney disease, told, don't worry, you're going to have dialysis and maybe someday you'll get a transplant. That meant nothing to me. My whole life was planned. I was going to be a PE teacher and I was going to get married and I was going to travel the world. And he had just told me, no, you're not doing any of that stuff. So, but he was happy, the doctor, because physically I had a treatment plan. But my head was just gone. I was in a different place. So just being a small bit more caring and considerate and human is what we're looking for. And sometimes the words you use can kind of make you more attracted and more human to the patient. And on the other side, doing these little small tactics and little tricks in the trade of sales into healthcare will have a positive effect on the patient and health outcomes, which is what you both want. So just change your words slightly, and that could change the person's life, certainly their health.
That's incredible. It's funny, you remind me of something recently. I can't remember the last thing he said. A famous salesperson, Rory Sutherland.
Yeah.
You've probably come across him in your if you're studying sales. And he said recently there, it was like sales tactic that could help, people taking their medicine. They we have such an issue globally that a doctor gives you and he says, take these 10 tablets, one in the morning, one in the evening. And we don't take the last few because we're getting better, and then we kind of forget. And he's like, I could probably solve that in a single day by making the last 3 tablets a different color. And then by simply telling the patient, make sure when you get to the blue, take the 3 blue ones last. And immediately then people would want to get to the end, or they would know it really sees it in their packet that they haven't got to the end of their, kind of medical kind of treatment. And again, I remember hearing that kind of going, correct, that's such a simple, that probably wouldn't add any cost, or that is just a sales tactic for something medical. And then if you take that and expound on it, yeah, there's probably thousands. There's probably so many little tactics we could learn from the $1 trillion industry that is sales.
And one of the big ones was that, like, prior to antibiotics, prior to 1930s, healthcare was, most people believe, a net negative on people's health. Right? We were giving people drugs and tablets and, trying out these concoctions, and they were making people more and more ill. It was only with kind of antibiotics that really, really changed. Medicine as a whole became a net positive, and people lived longer, and antibiotics and vaccines really kicked in and helped change the life. But the effect of that and how successful it has been is that, like, the population has exploded. Like, we're stacking populations on top of each other. So healthcare does work. But prior to that, in the 90s, most healthcare was either negative or else it was placebo. It was positive suggestions from the doctor were as useful as the tablets they were taking. So again, we can learn from that time. Like, I'm very happy we've progressed, and medicine is spectacular. I am undoubtedly only alive today because of medicine, because of the healthcare teams, because of pharmaceutical companies and clinicians. That's why I'm alive. But we can also enhance immensely people's health by utilizing the power of psychology and how we can work with psychology to influence and persuade. And I had it there, like, influenced isn't manipulation, right? It's motivation with empathy. So we need a bit more empathy in healthcare. I don't think anyone would deny that. Not from nurses, but from more the doctor side of things, that small bit more empathy, maybe change how we interact with the patients ever so slightly, and these small changes can have big effects.
Darren Cawley, fantastic. If anyone wants to find you or reach out to you, where would they find you?
Well, on LinkedIn. I think my website's darrencawley.com. I'm going to start putting up more writing there about these topics and get some feedback, because this is just something that's germinating in my mind now, and it's pulling from a lot of different areas. So I'd love to hear people's feedback and what other stories they have where they can back this up maybe and help me out.
Fantastic. Darren, thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.